We all love to give and get books. I'm sure you do too. So we've put together a list of our favorite books of the year to make it easy. And we invite you to share your best of list in the comments too. Your favorite book of 2024 might just be the one that makes another Book Clubbers year in 2025.
Well, hi, and welcome to the PBS Books Readers Club.
What an amazing year of reading it's been. In this special episode, we'll highlight some of the incredible moments we've had with authors and share our favorite books of the year. It's the ultimate gifting guide for readers.
Hi, I'm Fred Nahat here with Lauren Smith, Princess Weeks, award-winning video essayist and author who brings her master's degree in literary theory to our table, and of course, Heather Marie Montilla, our resident librarian and PBS Books National Director.
But of course, you are the most important person in this book club. We invite you to share your thoughts with us and the other book clubbers in the comments. What was your favorite book that you read this year? How many did you read? Which author interview was your favorite? We really want to know. Truly, we love reading and responding to your comments in the chat.
Well, speaking of enjoying time in the company of other readers, be sure to join the PBS Books Readers Club Facebook group. You'll find and share book recommendations and discuss your favorite reads anytime.
And please share this event. As we always say, friends do not let friends miss out on great books. So book friends, it's been a really special year of reading. I have loved every second.
Yeah, when I signed on for this, I was so excited because I love reading, but it has honestly been so fulfilling to get to talk to all of you. I mean, like, the authors are great, we love them, but honestly, getting to bond with you guys, hearing your thoughts, like, that to me was the best part of this.
I agree. I mean, you guys know I read lots of books to interview authors for PBS Books, but being able to read alongside you and then also reading and hearing what our viewers think, both was so fulfilling. I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, to me, again, the diversity of thought around this table, the diversity of thought that our readers share with us, there could be no better group that comes together. We're all so different. We're from different parts of the country. We are of different generations, of different perspectives. And so the appreciation of all of that makes each one of the books that much more fulfilling and enlightening, at least to me.
Well, I think that's a good point because a lot of times when you form a book club, you form it with your friends and your peers, right? Yeah. You don't often have people that are different from you in your book club, and so we have each other, but we also have everybody at home offering their perspectives, and it's my favorite time of every single month when we do our Facebook Live episode and the hearts just start flowing across the screen and people are sharing their comments, and it makes my heart swell. I love it so much.
Yeah, they get so connected, and a lot of times they echo the thoughts that we had, and then a lot of times it's, wow, blowing me away with things that I never considered. Again, that diversity of thought, that diversity of geography, that diversity of where one is when the book hits them in their life or their experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you are what makes this all so special. So thank you for being with us.
Well, coming up, we're going to share our best of the year book recommendations, and we want to get you connected with all the great author talks coming up next year.
Like any good book club, it's more fun when we all get involved. There are many ways to connect with us, including our e-newsletter. You'll find exclusive author interviews, book recommendations, and more. Visit pbsbooks.org/subscribe.
Yeah, and be sure to follow PBS Books on Facebook and Instagram and fill up your feed with great books and authors.
And if you really love this PBS Book Club, I hope you'll take a moment to show your support because PBS stations rely on donations from folks like you and me. And if you'd like to see more of the PBS Books Readers Club, here's a great way to help us keep it going. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, just click the link in the comments or description or visit pbsbooks.org/donate.
You will be taken to your local PBS station's giving webpage where you can find some PBS Books swag as our thanks for supporting this program. One of those gifts is our official PBS Books mugs, just $5 a month. We'll get you the PBS Books mug, and it makes you a member of your local PBS station, giving you access to all of the amazing shows in Passport, including the extended editions of our PBS Books Readers Club episodes, full seasons of masterpiece dramas, and so much more.
If you want to see more of the PBS Books Readers Club, we got to hear from you. Just click that link in the description or visit pbsbooks.org/donate. We'll send you a set of the official PBS Books stickers too, along with your mug. My weekend is booked. That is very true, almost all of the time for us. Again, donations support your local PBS station, and it helps us keep this book club going for another year.
Well, looking over the last year, one of the things that I discovered and I just really enjoyed is that the authors we met are people, just like us. What separates them from us, I think, is process. And we were able to get into what is their process, and each one of them had a different way to go about writing these books that have reached and touched all of us. But the process, to me, so fascinating.
So interesting. What did you think?
I thought everyone who had like a very stringent routine, I was very impressed by.
Yes.
Like people who are like getting up early, and a lot of them are morning people, like a lot of morning writers. And I was as a night owl, I'm like,
Right? Allison Pataki was one. She's like, I have, like, sit down, I've got my coffee, I've got my music, I'm in my office, like 7 o'clock every day, here I go.
Yeah.
Classical music.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so inspirational because and I felt like with Julia Alvarez, like the way she talks about like getting through with that prayer, that mantra at the beginning.
ritual.
Her
Yes,
ritual.
the
I thought that was
creative
that was just so impactful, and like I think about that every time I sit down at my desk. It's like what helps center me as I get ready to do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
I loved how Percival Everett talked about that his process is 90% research and 10% thinking, and then all writing. For me, that was so interesting to think about just the immense amount of research that he does, and that was echoed really across the board. If we think about Allison Pataki,
Yeah, for sure.
right? She said for at least 2 years, right? She just dug in, reading everything she could find about Margaret Fuller. And then she didn't start writing until that voice spoke to her.
Yeah. And she visited all the places that she was, put herself in the environment.
Very, very cool. Percival Everett, the thing that he, I guess, showed me is it's an athletic pursuit. You just gotta write, get in a room and write. And the other one, which you could probably relate to, is Tana French says she's a night person. She likes to, stay up late and do all this, but she has kids. So
Right.
she had to call an audible.
Geraldine Brooks, too, also had
and
that
just,
same
and
story.
changing routine. And so process is process, but then life gets in the way, so they were able to tackle that.
The other thing I loved about Tana is that she doesn't know the end.
Right.
When she starts,
Which I thought was so good. Yeah.
so crazy to me. And Percival Everett said he did his best writing while he was fishing.
Yes.
Which I loved that. I loved that.
Him saying he read, like he kept rereading like Huckleberry Finn like 30 plus times. I was like, I can't imagine reading that book over and over again. But like the like you said, athleticism of like using your brain and really investing in the work. It's just like, I was like, whoa.
But it kind of goes to show there's no wrong or right way to be a writer. Everyone had their own style, their own process. And it was so interesting to hear about all of the different ways that they go about creating the amazing work that they do.
Well, speaking of process, here's the highlights of our favorite authors talking about their process on the PBS Books Readers Club.
I am a creature of my rituals. I am. It used to be that I loved late at night because it was so quiet. Everybody had gone on to their sleep or whatever. But I can't keep that up as I grow older. I like early morning, before the mind clutters with other things. And I love the solitude, cup of coffee. And I don't like to read emails or get involved with anything until I'm done, because then those things get in my head instead of my characters. And I could no more. I have friends that go to the coffee shop to write. Are you kidding? I know these stories are walking around. I want to hear them. I would be distracted. I could not do it that way. So I don't really mix it up. I need that solitude and that quiet.
My brain is pretty worthless after 3 p.m. Eastern. Get up, get the coffee going. While the coffee's pumping through the veins, sit down and be productive. That's my way. I like to work at home in my office because I like to control the music. I like to control the playlist. I like classical music where there are no lyrics, because if there are lyrics, I get distracted. I like to have easy access to tea refills, water refills, coffee. I like to control the temperature if my feet are getting cold from sitting still too long.
Same.
So coffee shops, for all those reasons, don't really work for me if I'm doing the deep creative thinking. If it's something a little lighter, then I can have that outside noise and distraction. But usually morning, classical music on, cup of coffee or hot tea, otherwise quiet and in the zone.
As far as my work process, I just trust myself that I'm working. 90% of what I do is research, and the other 10% is thinking. Writing fiction is labor intensive. There's only one way to end up with 500 pages of something, and that's to write it one word at a time, and that's a lot of scribbling. I work longhand.
Wow.
And then, well, it's because I can't type, and then I type it up, which takes a while, but it also gives me a chance to edit as I'm writing.
Before I had kids, I was a night owl. That's what I like. I like getting up at about 10 o'clock and then staying up until 2, 3 a.m. writing and then going to bed. My brain doesn't even work properly until about after 10 p.m.
Yeah, that sounds like somebody else I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, then I had babies and they had other ideas and they did not think I should be allowed to sleep till 10 in the morning. And now I've got school-age kids, so I'm up for the school run. So now my writing hours are between when I get them to school to when they come back in the door.
You have to treat it like a job. I don't believe in writer's block because auto mechanics aren't allowed to have auto mechanics block, and hairdressers don't have hairdressers block. You go to work every day, and you can't do well every day. You can't make beautiful writing every day, but you can do something. And if you've got something, you've got something to work with. And that was inspired by a friend who's a great sculptor called Sarah Z. And she was asked about her process. And she said her process is mess, 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 art.
Perfect.
And I just find that such a liberating thought, because you can't make art every day, but you can absolutely make a mess every day. So go to work.
I'm also always curious about our authors' inspiration for writing, whether they wanted to be an author when they grew up or they sort of stumbled on it later in life. Everyone had sort of a different origin story.
Yeah, Julia Alvarez's story about her tia, like helping her love reading really
She
struck
didn't like books.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we hear so many times of people who loved it automatically. I love how your family and the people around you help build you up. And it's not always just your mom or your dad, it's your aunt and your cousin. And I just think that I just loved, and then she had her picture with her, and I thought that was just one of my favorite moments. So I love that origin story personally.
Well, and she also came to it as a storyteller, which
Yeah.
is also interesting. And I think we see that in all of our authors, this real ability and want to tell a story. If you think of Tana Frank, right, her ability to really talk about, it's a Western trope. I had never thought of that at all, but that was her inspiration. It was really interesting because I went back and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so different to think about it in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everyone had sort of a different reason for writing too. I remember Scott Alexander Howard, his first novel was one that we covered on the Readers Club, and it was The Other Valley. And him telling his story about he had a friend that passed away, and it sort of sparked this idea in his head for the novel, and also allowed him to put so much heart into that book. I thought that was a really interesting, and he wasn't always an author, right? He was like a professor of psychology, and it's
super doctorate guy.
It's interesting to see how that plays into his novel, his backstory.
Well, he also had a friend that kept bugging him. He wanted to read part of the book.
Yeah.
And Scott kept putting him off, and finally he relented. And the other thing to me was Geraldine Brooks. Her real life experience with horses.
Yeah.
And she delved into a topic with that horse that was just multi-generational and so amazing how she was able to take a spark from her real life, and the end result in horse was just fascinating to me.
I love that story she told too. I think we asked her do you love horses? She's like, oh, well, I took it up when I was 50. I just thought it would be fun. And I had no idea what I was getting into.
Exactly.
I love that so
Never
much.
too late.
Never too late.
Well, and she was a journalist, right?
Yeah.
So
Ron Thorogood. But
And so to think about that career path and then to be writing historic fiction or mystery, and how they also come to their craft as an author of fiction with that journalistic perspective, which also brings a richness to their writing.
She got a little glint in her eyes. She said it's a lot like journalism, but just a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
You make your own facts.
Well, let's take a look, shall we? A year's worth of inspiration from our PBS Books authors.
But I have one auntie who read books, and she was considered a jamona, an old maid, because she was all of 24 and not married. And mamita, my grandmother, would say, "It's because your nose is always in a book. One man, one woman who thinks," basically is what she was saying. And that tia gave me a copy of 1001 Nights. And I loved, I lied when I said books were all boring to me. That book was beloved. It was the first time, here was a girl with brown skin. She wasn't like a princess or something. She could have been a Dominican. And she was brave and bold, and she learned all the stories there were to tell, and she saved her life by storytelling. I thought, wow, I didn't know stories had that kind of power. It put a little seed in the bloodstream of my imagination, which I carried with me when I came with this idea that stories have power and that a girl could tell them and free herself and all the other women in the kingdom. Wow, that's powerful.
I love your tia for sharing that book with you.
Thank you. She's still alive. My tia, and you know what? Of all the, I don't have a lot of pictures here, but of all the people in my, she's still alive. She's about 94. My tia.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's
You can't see her.
beautiful. We love her.
She's my, yeah, yep. So she knows that she's responsible.
10 years ago, I had a good friend who passed away. She was in hospice, and a few days before she died, I had this sudden image of these towns that just repeated over and over again, all staggered in time at these precise intervals. And I kind of just thought, that's a cool idea. I should do something with that someday, or maybe somebody else should. And didn't really think about it for a long time. But the reason that grief has always been the main impetus for time travel in this story kind of stems from that personal context. You know, I was in a situation where I was trying to help coordinate whether, you know, all of her friends could see her again, you know, because things were moving more quickly than we'd expected them to. And we didn't end up getting to, most of us didn't end up getting to say goodbye to her in the way that we would have liked. And we had to sort of reconcile ourselves to the fact that the last time we saw her, this kind of incidental, you know, just hi, goodbye, was the last time. And so I think that this world being structured around people kind of getting to see a final, you know, have a final vision of a loved one and say a final goodbye, even if at a distance, I think that's, you know, that's the reason why.
I have to say it began for me with the rather rash decision to take up horse riding in my 50s, having never been on horse. But I was at, actually, it was a conference for writers in Santa Fe, and it was on a ranch, and one of the wranglers persuaded me that they were great horses and nothing terrible would happen to me if I went on a trail ride, and I believed him. And I had an ecstatic experience doing it. And then I was lucky enough to go to a lunch at Plymouth Patuxet Museum. And at the same lunch, way down the table, a gentleman from the Smithsonian was telling his lunchmates how he had just delivered the skeleton of the greatest racehorse in the American 19th century from a forgotten place in the attic at the Natural History Museum in Washington to pride of place in the International Museum of the Horse in Kentucky, because this horse was the reason that Kentucky became the center of thoroughbred breeding in America. And my salad was uneaten and my lunch got a scintilla of my attention, because I knew right away that this was going to be my next novel.
Now, one takeaway that stuck with me from reading Leonardo da Vinci from Walter Isaacson was the importance of collaboration and how great works are never really accomplished alone. I always like to take the opportunity to ask the authors about the advice they've received that's made a difference in their lives and what they would share with aspiring writers.
Yeah, they've had some really good answers too. I always like their answer to that question.
Yeah, like I was really, as someone who really struggles to like sit down and like figure out how I want to write, when Geraldine Brooks just said like, you can't rely on the muse to strike, you just have to do it. Like it's very, forward, but I just think like, it's true, sometimes you just have to go after what you want. And so like, I definitely have taken that advice to heart. And you said that there was similar advice you heard from Henry Louis Gates.
Yeah,
Jr.
he certainly said, if you write one page every day, that at the end of the year you will have written 365 pages. And I think for someone, I'm not a writer, but then if you even think of what Julia Alvarez said, right? She said, when my reading is bad, my writing is bad too.
Yeah.
And so her advice was read, 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 and to find a community of readers. And that's what we found here. Not only here, but out there too with all of you.
Yeah, I liked chatting with Olivia Ford too, because she was somebody that wasn't always a novelist. She was a TV producer. She worked in reality TV. And then she entered a contest, right? And her advice was like to just go for it and to not be too hard on yourself. She's like, there are sometimes those darker days that aren't great, but to appreciate the process of writing. I thought that was really good advice too.
Well, to me, I think Alison Pateki was an example of this, and also maybe she didn't say it, but sayings are there for a reason, which is write what you know. And she loves history so much, and her whole experience been surrounded. She was a real fan of history. Write what you know, and that that's just something that's maybe a stereotype, but so true.
Well, then, and Julia Alvarez would say, like, don't write what you know, because then how will you discover different things? So they have conflicting ideas on that, but it depends on the writer. There's a different process for everyone.
That's why they make wallpaper. All right. When it comes to advice, both given and taken from authors, here's some highlights of this year on the PBS Books Readers Club.
If you pursue curiosity for its own sake, where you're not just being curious about something because it may lead to something that'd be useful for you. Curiosity for its own sake sometimes becomes its own reward, and good things come from it. I guess one more piece of advice I give is that everybody I've written about, it turned out to be not just about their passion, but about connecting their passion to something larger than themselves. Whether it's Elon Musk trying to get to Mars, or Leonardo da Vinci, trying to connect science and the humanities and square the circle and make the perfect smile, or Einstein trying to unite all the forces in the universe. They all felt like they were driven by a mission, not simply driven by making money.
If you write a page a day, in the end of the year, you've written 365 pages. Think about anybody can write a page. 3 paragraphs, double space. You can do it. So that when you have a writer's block, regularity is very important, a routine, so that you're just in the flow. And I tell my students, you have to have a first draft before you can have a second draft. So write down anything just to keep it coming out. Notes to yourself. Then you go back and you polish it. And then you do a final draft. That's crucial.
Great books are made in the edit. Because I think sometimes we read our favourite books and we think, I will never be able to write anything like that. And that's because we're seeing the book after it's been through loads of different people and edited, and you're seeing a kind of polished end product, when really, if you saw the first draft, it might feel a bit more achievable. So I think the best advice was being told that, because actually it made me be less self-critical and just get those words down, because truly it is just like getting the words down, and then you can shape it and make it really good, rather than worrying about every sentence being perfect. The happiest I've been on this journey was on the good writing days. That even was better than the feeling of seeing the cover for the first time. Like truly, it was the good writing days. So a bit like life, enjoy the journey and don't just focus on the destination.
A lot of inspiration to take away from these authors, that's for sure. And we've had some fun along the way too.
Definitely. I think my favorite part during the interviews is like when the elements come into play. And like there was a fun moment with Geraldine Brooks, our first interview, where like her birds were just
like Australian birds, crazy birds,
just howling at her. And then Rachel Khong just like at the hotel, just trying so hard to be there for us. Like I just think like life is hard and interviews are hard when you're not in person. I think all those little moments of just like humanity and connection when despite all of that
They're
were just
real
so
people,
fun.
just like
Exactly.
us. Yeah.
Their Wi-Fi fails too.
Well, proving that the PBS Books Readers Club pauses for no person, Scott Alexander Howard getting a FedEx delivery.
He's like, I gotta get up. I need this package.
In the middle of the interview, love that. That's just a slice of life.
I also loved Percival Everett was just funny in general. It comes through in his writing, but he was such like a dry humor, funny guy.
Yes.
I remember us being nervous to talk to him because he's so esteemed and a professor. We were all trying to be on our best behavior. And then he told this story. We're like, so how did you come up with James, thinking it would be this like big thing that he's been thinking about forever? And he's like, well, I was playing tennis and I hit a wild shot and it just like came to me. I'm like, okay, I got to play more tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
Well, and I really thought it was funny when we were speaking to Robert Thorogood and we asked him about, his inspirations, and he not only said Agatha Christie, but what was so funny is he said how much he hated Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
And went on and on about it. And for me, it was just so funny to think about, like, you have two shops. You have Agatha Christie and you have Sherlock Holmes, and never shall those meet.
Yeah. No betwixting for those two.
No.
There were so many great moments. Here are a few of our favorites.
Because Agatha Christie was at the forefront of this. I mean, there are two types of murder mystery readers, I sort of think. There are the ones who are obsessed with Sherlock Holmes and the ones who are obsessed with Agatha Christie. I'm not interested in Sherlock Holmes. I find him boorish and irritating, and I don't like him at all. And the mysteries aren't that good. There we are. That's the
soundbite for this entire interview. We're going to make
I think Arthur Conan Doyle will survive my opinion. That's just a personal preference.
Which has had a thriving Black community. You're hearing our wonderful Australian cockatoos.
That's
in the
amazing. I love it. It's like great news, I think. Yeah, I love it. Big and small.
Yeah, it's a big animal episode.
And we have these kind of heavily guarded borders between the past and the future in the novel. Oop, sorry, I'm gonna have to start that again because I'm getting a stupid phone call that interrupted my stream. Okay.
If it's your mom, you're allowed to answer. That's what we've decided on this set.
I think it's FedEx.
Rachel Khong, thank you so much for joining the PBS Books Readers Club. It's been so wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for putting up with this very public space that I'm in.
It's the true life of a writer.
Exactly.
Yes, for sure. Giving us the full experience.
Very much on the road right now. Lots of different beds, lots of different meals, and just getting from place to place. But I hope to meet some readers on the road, and I think that would be it's just part of the honor and privilege.
Well, I wish I could tell you that I had a burning desire for many years to write this, but I didn't. About 3 years ago, I was playing tennis, and I made a really poor shot. And as I watched the ball sail away, I thought to myself, I wonder why. I wonder if anyone has ever written this from the point of view of Jim, and as it's also explained to me why I hit the ball so poorly.
I wish I had thoughts like that when I was playing tennis.
Yes, of course.
So I went home and I couldn't find an example of the story of Huckleberry Finn through Jim's eyes. So I just decided to do it, and it happened.
I like to think I am a pretty positive person, but weirdly, a lot of the mystery writers I know are kind of upbeat and sociable and cheerful. And I figure it's because if anything dark ever pops into my head, I've got an outlet for it. I've got somewhere to put it. It just doesn't hang around there bouncing around. I can write it down, and with any luck, I even get paid for it. That's great.
So much fun. Y'all managed to bring out the best in our authors. And these authors they've been great. And they've really opened up and shared some pretty personal and vulnerable stories, don't you think?
Yeah, they really have. They really have.
I was so impressed with so Geraldine Brooks was our first interview, and she was so vulnerable about her own grieving process with her husband, who had just recently passed away, and finishing the book in part for him because they had started working on stuff together. And I believe she wrote a memoir about her grieving process. And I just thought, like, we're strangers, and yet she was so willing to share that with us, you know? And even like the loss of her horse, about how that's what inspired something she did later in life, and just dealing with those dual griefs and still laughing and having fun. I think, like, as we're all getting older, it's just a reminder that, like, there is still joy to be found even in like the saddest moments.
Yeah, Olivia Ford was one too. I thought she was so sweet how close she was with her grandparents. And she sort of based the characters in her novel, but like Bernard, like the perfect like older man husband, like he was so
the
cute.
ideal man.
The ideal man, to know that like that sweet relationship.
Not including you.
Don't forget about Emerson. Emerson will be piqued if he hears about that.
Oh, yes, oh my gosh.
Oh, but I loved Bernard, and to
yeah.
hear like how it's based off of her grandparents and their relationship was so special. And also those memories of like food and the baking and how important it is in family traditions. That one had a lot of special moments.
Yeah, it really did for me as well. Picking up on that, I thought it was a fantastic beach read, Olivia Ford. And then I think it was probably her grandmother, more my mother, but how we connected over women who would put their lipstick on to answer the telephone. Yeah. And we really were like on the same page as that, and I felt real warm about that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and for me, Julia Alvarez, everything she talked about in regard to her reading, because she made it so important to read, but then she shared that her eyes are really going, and so she is reading more on book readers. But she always wants the actual copy of a book.
Yeah.
She also shared that this, she thinks or thought many times, would be her last book. And that, to me, as someone who has read her work, and, you know, especially for Dominicans, just would be a huge loss, but all Americans. I also thought that she shared with us that she actually buried the manuscript of In the Time with Butterflies, which is kind of like what happened in
The Cemetery of Untold
Exactly,
Stories.
right?
Yeah.
So how crazy to think about that all the years back, it was like the seed that has blossomed into what it is now.
Yeah, and Rachel Kong shared some really special memories too, just talking about how her book, Real Americans, had some of those feelings that she's had of like not ever feeling in the right place. Like she never feels at home no matter where she is. And like you said, Princess, like we haven't talked to these authors before. It's not like we've been like, hanging out with them. I wish we could. But they're so giving and they've been so warm, and we've loved every single minute with them.
Well, what good is a book if it's not pulling at the heartstrings? Here are some top heartfelt moments from the last year.
Jenny and Bernard were largely inspired by my own grandparents. I'm super close to them. They live in our house, in my parents' house. So we all lived together. They looked after me so much as a child. So I've always felt so close to them. So much of Jenny and Bernard is like my grandparents. However, they are also their own people. They aren't a copy of my grandparents. So I recently heard my favourite author, Joanna Glenn, talking about this. And as an author, it's like everyone you've ever met and every experience you've ever had jumbles up in your head. And then you channel little pieces of it that you didn't even know were in there into these people, which is what makes them feel real. So I think all these characters are a jumble of thousands of different people that I've met. But I would say the driving and inspiration for Jenny and Bernard is my grandparents.
I was raised broadly by an amazing group of women. There was my mum, there was my great aunt Jean, my great aunt Jess, my grandmother Betty, who every night at 6 p.m. would have exactly one glass of scotch and no more than that. She would smoke one cigarette a month. She never got addicted. She'd be at a party. She was a queen. She was an amazing, amazing woman. So there were these amazing women in my childhood, and I was just sort of aware that the husbands had the status. The husbands put on the suit. The husbands went out and worked. The husbands had the money. They had the control. And I'd be at home. My mum would get her friends round, and they'd come round and they'd sit there and they'd smoke and they'd drink. In those days, you smoke and drank. Nowadays, you only do one of those things. And they'd sit there and they'd smoke and they'd drink, and they'd be funny and they'd be witty. And I used to sit I'm like 10 years old. I'd sit in the corner of the room and I'd play the piano. because that's what I sort of did when I wasn't doing magic, I was playing the piano. And I'd listen to these women and the way they talked, how sharp they were, how amazingly witty and ribald they were. That stayed with me my whole life. And so, yes, you know, all of my work is a love letter to Agatha Christie, but the Marlowe Murder Club in particular it's a love letter to all of these brilliant women who formed me.
I think the hope is that if some immigrant children and parents are able to see themselves in the story, that's beautiful. And that's something that I hope for, because this is a book that I wanted to write for someone like myself who sort of felt in between two worlds, or maybe even more than two, you know, in between worlds and not quite fully belonging in one space. And so I wrote it for that reason. And I wrote it to sort of just, like tell the person who might feel similar to me that that's okay, that you don't have to belong in one space. You can belong in many spaces, but also what is belonging anyway, right?
As I grow older, and into the late chapters of my own life, I wanted to explore the landscape of growing old, and especially growing old in a craft that I've given my life to practicing. And, you know, instead of, usually you read Portrait of the Artist as a young man, I wanted this to be a portrait of the artist as an old woman and a Latina, many of whose stories came from somewhere else, and explore that landscape. You know, I write to understand things. I don't write because I already know things. That would bore me to death. I write because I don't know, and I want to explore what that landscape is like.
Book clubbers, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us all year long. If you're new to us, be sure to get connected by following us on Facebook, subscribing on YouTube, and signing up for our newsletter at pbsbooks.org/subscribe, and tell your friends to sign up too.
You can also help us bring another year of Author Talks by supporting PBS Books and your local station with a donation at pbsbooks.org/donate. Remember that as a member of your local station, you can also unlock PBS Passport, the members-only section of the PBS app, where you'll find our extended author interviews, full seasons of masterpiece dramas, Ken Burns documentaries, concert specials, and so much more.
Well, just $5 a month makes you a member of your local PBS station, giving you access to full seasons of Masterpiece in Passport, and you can get the PBS Books mug. My weekend is booked.
Yes.
That is true. Just about every weekend with us. And we love it. Just click the link in the description or visit pbsbooks.org/donate, and you'll be taken right to your local PBS station's giving page.
Every station's donation page is a little different, so you might need to search a little bit to find the PBS Books gifts, but stick with us, please, because your support makes this Readers Club possible.
And everyone can help by sharing this video and leaving us a comment, a like, or a love. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. Truly, your comments, shares, and participation, well, they mean the world to all of us, so thank you so much.
Yes, we're going to talk about our favorite books now, and we want to hear what your favorite books are, too. So make sure that you share that in the comments. Now, we all love to give and get books. I'm sure you do, too. So we've put together a list of our favorite books of the year to make it easy, and we invite you to share your best of list in the comments, too. Your favorite book of 2024 might just be the one that makes another Book Clubbers year in 2025. Heather, as our resident librarian, I think you should have the honor of giving your list first.
Well, I would love to start with The Cemetery of Untold Stories. As you all know, Julia Alvarez, we spoke with her. She was brilliant. It's about Alma Cruz, who is a writer, and she basically wants to bury all of her stories, and it doesn't go exactly how she thought it would, and it is the journey of Alma and people who encounter her. I think it's brilliant. I think it's fun. I think it's fantasy, and I think it's a really good gift. Next, I'm going to do some nonfiction. So, Music and Mind.
That's a big one there,
I know
Heather.
you might be intimidated by this book. This book is brilliant. So, Renee Fleming is one of the most important music advocates of our time, and she is basically putting together all of these amazing writers on why music is important, how it impacts the mind more than anything else. You don't have to read the whole thing. You can pick and choose what you want to read, and you're going to walk away with understanding that music in our lives is incredibly important.
And how it impacts health too. I think that's super interesting.
Exactly. So there are people who can't walk with Parkinson's, but they can dance when they listen to music. And this talks about those studies, right? So you don't have to go get like a huge scientific book. This kind of peppers in both personal stories and research, which I love. Quickly, The Highest Calling, Conversations on the American Presidency. This is David Rubenstein's new book. So if you haven't read his work before, this is for that person in your life who loves history, who wants to think about the presidency, about what the history historians are writing. And you have George W. Bush. If the president is living, they've been interviewed for this book. But then you have historians like Annette Gordon-Reed, who wrote Juneteenth. You have lots of amazing historians. David Rubenstein, if you don't know him, he was the person behind Iconic America on PBS. He also is the big sponsor of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. Amazing voice in the book. You're gonna walk away with a lot of information. And my last pick, Moonflower Murders. So it's by Anthony Horowitz. It's a sequel to Magpie Murders. It's also on Masterpiece PBS. But what I love about it is how brilliant Anthony is to weave in anagrams, mystery, in this really complex whodunit that leaves you guessing and surprised about what's going to happen. And if you watch the show, still you need to read the book because they're different. And you'll love it. You'll love both.
Love a good murder mystery.
I love a good murder mystery. Over to you.
You're so thorough. I'm going to use my bookseller stuff, so I will try to do it quick. So my number one pick is definitely James by Percival Everett, retelling of Huck Finn through the perspective of Jim, now James. It's just brilliant. It's humorous. It honors the original text while still giving a new perspective with everything.
That one sticks with you. That one is one you will never forget your whole life.
And I think you're going to be so surprised by how funny it is. I don't think people expect that, but it's so funny. Next is a debut by a friend of mine, Honey, by Isabel Banta. It's a debut novel about a female singer in the 90s. It's very much taking from that, Britney Spears kind of element and the experience of growing up in the public eye, exploring your sexuality in that sort of tense environment. For my thriller fans out there, The Only One by Riley Sager. It's this story about this woman who was just recently cleared of having been in a, let's just say, delicate situation, and she is sent to essentially take care of this older woman who was accused of essentially murdering her entire family, but then acquitted. So it's kind of like, what if you had to take care of Lizzie Borden?
Yes,
on a hill, on the top of the hill that's about to fall into a cliff. Very epic, very good. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I read this because I was trying to read, outside of Western literature, and it's this collection of stories about, there's this little coffee shop in Tokyo where if you sit at the right time, you can go back in time to speak to someone that you can stay there until the coffee gets cold. Oh. And so it's these little vignettes of people like talking to old lovers or old family members for just like a few seconds.
Quickly.
And that's the whole thing, is like you're trying to just hold on to that moment in time. And then I'll do this quickly. The Stone Sky.
Go ahead, take your time.
Okay. The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. I had started reading the Broken Earth trilogy and I finally finished it this year. Incredible series. It takes place in this alternate universe.
Is it like a fantasy?
It's a fantasy novel. It takes place in this world where there are people who can control the earth, control stone, and they deal with these very intense weather patterns. So they're right now going through like what they call the 5th season, like a very apocalyptic, cataclysmic situation. And throughout it is like this mother trying to reconnect with her daughter. Okay. And so it just weaves all that together really beautifully.
I love a fantasy.
It's so good. And then last is The Wager. It's by the same author who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon. I love nautical things. Like anything,
no idea.
I love like ship disasters with a little smidgen of cannibalism. I'm like, wow. And it's one of my favorite books. It's so readable, it's so quick, and I think that it really talks about.
And it's nonfiction, is it not?
It's nonfiction,
but it doesn't read like nonfiction.
It's so compelling, and I think overall what he really questions is you have this idea of like the British Navy as like this very stringent, very like imperial force. How do they act when they're in a situation where all of that hierarchy, all of that stringent stiff upper lip no longer qualifies.
Yes.
How they themselves, it's kind of like Lord of the Flies.
Yes.
Essentially. So it's epic, it's great. I love it. Your dads will love it.
Oh my God. Well, that's good because it's hard to find books for dads. So
yeah,
thank you for
it's
that pick.
pinnacle dad book.
Yeah. All right, speaking of dads,
Well, I am
What are your
dealing
favorites?
with a bunch of literary all-stars here. My 2 book recommendations come from this year's list. They show what a bit of an Anglophile I am. The first one, of course, is Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame, which is about this octogenarian woman who has an incredible, deep, touching, poignant backstory. The greatest husband in the history of husbands, apparently. Bernard's so fantastic. And then her sort of stealthy entrance into the great British baking show, and just amazing. And then the other one, you know, Cubans have cigars, Russians have vodka, Brits have mysteries. No one does it better than them. I don't know what the hell's happening in Marlowe, but
You gotta go.
again, the profile, a septuagenarian woman, here's a gunshot, and then puts together a confederation of sort of lesser noticed, kind of under the radar ladies of Marlowe who cracked the case. And this death is serious business. And I'm so excited there's a series in Marlowe. So,
yes,
awesome.
that was one. I loved Marlowe Murder Club as well. And we have to read a lot of books for work, right? So sometimes I have to like limit myself, but that was one I couldn't help but read the other 2 in the series that I could get my hands on. I had to read them
So
all.
great. So
Yeah.
good.
Okay, so that's a good list. My list is a little bit eclectic. I got some different things. So the first one I picked is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin.
People love that book.
Okay, so this book got me through sort of a hard time. I had like really hurt my back. I had to have surgery. It was a really low moment for me. And just listening to him talk about like creativity in all of its forms I needed some inspiration, and this gave it. Rick Rubin, if you don't know, he is sort of an iconic music producer. He's produced music from Aerosmith to the Red Hot Chili Peppers to Run DMC, even I think Adele, Lady Gaga.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He knows what he's doing when it comes to creativity. And it's not like an autobiography. It's really about, it's almost like, it reads like a poem about creativity. And it's not like you have to be a painter or write songs. It's like you can bring creativity to solving a problem at work or to creating a meal for your family or planning a birthday party. This one was really special, and I also like how cool it looks.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to give a gift to a gentleman or maybe like your grandson, this is one that looks really cool on like a 20-something's nightstand. I just feel like it's got like cool guy vibes. And okay, so you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but this one I almost just like because it's so pretty.
It is, yeah.
This is By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, and this is for people, if you are a Shakespeare fan, this sort of retells maybe how those plays got written, and maybe it wasn't Shakespeare that wrote all of them. Maybe it was a woman, and she goes through, it's like half historical fiction, half modern day. It's a really interesting book. If you like Jodi Picoult, this is her latest. I think you'll really like it. You like fantasy. I hate the word guilty pleasure when it comes to reading because I think you should just read whatever you like and not feel bad about it. But like, if I had a guilty pleasure, it would be like YA and fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. So this one, I read it a few years ago, but it's really stuck with me. It's Uprooted by Naomi Novik.
Oh, I love that book. I love that.
Just like it was, I love how it was sort of based in folklore and it had sort of a dark fairy tale vibe. It's about this town that's on the edge of a corrupted wood, and this wood is sort of dark and dangerous, and the town is protected by this mysterious wizard that nobody sees, and as payment for his protection, they have to like give him a young woman that has to serve him for 10
As
years.
you do.
As you do. And nobody really knows what happens to this person.
Yeah.
And so it's really good. And it's sort of just, I don't know, dark and folky and fairy tale-y. And I really like that one. So Uprooted by Naomi Novik. And then finally, I really like Leigh Bardugo also for fantasy. A lot of people like the Shadow and Bone series, which I really liked. But this year I also read her latest series, The Ninth House.
Those are great.
And Hellbent. These ones, they dip a little bit more into horror. They're pretty spooky, but not too much.
Yeah.
They're about the secret societies at Yale.
Yeah.
And these are real societies that like real like prominent people have been in.
Skull and Bones.
Yes, it's about Skull and Bones.
And
It's what
Dark Academia is so in right now. Like
Yes.
that is like the genre. So those are
Yes.
great choices.
So there's ghosts and there's magic and it's super creepy and really, really interesting. So those are my fantastical picks. And I have one more. And this one's a little off the wall and it's a little bit of a plug because we worked with this author on his PBS special this year. It's called Living Wild by Hilton Carter. This is the perfect gift if you have someone in your life that likes plants. This book is about, it's sort of a how to take care of plants, how to style them. Hilton Carter is amazing. He's the coolest guy.
Yes.
And he is an interior stylist, he's an artist, and he knows how to take care of plants. So the book teaches you a lot of stuff, but it's beautiful. It is this gorgeous piece of art that like I have out on my coffee table, and I've already gifted this book to many people that love plants, like with the plant. So I think it's really the perfect gift.
I like that.
Just like, a plug, you can watch the show on PBS Passport too. It's really, really good. So those are my picks for the year.
Well, when it comes to reading, these are my stars. And I think this is a great example of how a book, Reuben, James, music, it can change your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pick up a book, change your life. So, book lovers, now it's time to share your book recommendations. What was your favorite book this year? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And be sure to join the PBS Books Readers Club Facebook group to stay connected with us all year long.
We also have more book recommendations in the PBS Books e-newsletter delivered straight to your inbox. Visit pbsbooks.org/subscribe.
We are so glad to have you as part of the PBS Books Readers Club. Help us keep it going for another year by making a donation to your local PBS station. Click the link in the description or visit pbsbooks.org/donate.
Remember, you can get your very own PBS Books mug along with the removable PBS Books stickers, oh there they are, for your laptop, phone, or wherever you'd like to show off your love for books and for PBS.
And everyone can help by sharing this video with all your friends by giving us a like or a love and subscribing to the PBS e-newsletter at pbsbooks.org/subscribe.
And thanks for reading along with the PBS Books Readers Club.